Commission meeting on the 27th of March, 2012. If I could ask all persons carrying a cell phone to please put the little job into a mode such that it doesn't, if you're back there, you can take calls, take them outside. If you're up here, please disable it. Yep. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Mayor Stoddard.
Here.
Vice Mayor Liebman.
Present.
Commissioner Newman.
Here.
Commissioner Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Welsh.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Call for a brief moment of silence and then the pledge. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, item 1.
Resolution opposing the award of tax credits under the 2011 Universal Application Housing Credit Program for the development of a 91-unit multifamily senior affordable housing project located at 6101 Sunset Drive in South Miami, Florida, as well as the hometown station, and to draft an ordinance placing a moratorium on multifamily development pending appropriate studies of absorption and vacancy rates, as well as transportation and parks concurrency.
I move the resolution be adopted and assigned the next number by the city clerk.
Second.
I'd like to amend the resolution. And the proposed amendments would be removing on line 3 from opposing the award of tax credits all the way to line number 7. So it would read a resolution drafting an ordinance placing a moratorium on multifamily developments pending appropriate studies of absorption and vacancy rates, as well as transportation and park concurrency. Okay, so in other words, from line 3 after a resolution, so opposing would be stricken to line 7, and the resolution would read a resolution drafting an ordinance placing a moratorium on multifamily development pending appropriate studies of absorption and vacancy rates, as well as transportation and parks concurrency.
Is there a second?
Oh, a second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Discussion of the motion to amend.
Yeah, discussion of motion to amend. Could we just keep in RT6, duplex, because that's much smaller than large multifamily projects. In other words, placing a moratorium on multifamily development after that, right, with the exception of RT6 zoned properties. So if somebody's got a duplex, that's not going to...
I don't believe that that's going to... Is that going to interfere with the construction of a duplex? No.
Okay, withdraw.
Okay, a vote on the amendment? Right. No, I know. There's some other amendments as well.
Yeah.
So let's just take them one at a time. This is just the title.
Another question?
Another question. I've noticed that in the 6101 property that when I figured out, based on a 700 square foot average of either a one-bedroom apartment or a two-bedroom apartment, if there were 91 units that got the specified amount of tax credits, that worked out to, and you figured it out how much per square foot, it worked out to $449 per square foot of construction that would get tax credits. For me, that's too much of a emphasis to build blindly, not worrying about if the project is going to be a viable project. During the boom, we called it stupid money. And, I don't want to see projects get built just because people get large amounts of tax incentives to build affordable housing. Yes, there may not be a need for affordable housing or that much of a need, but when you offer $250,000 of tax credits for the hometown station per unit, and the actual cost of construction is about half of that, that just floods the market with too much money. And in between 2004 and 2006, we've seen what happens when the market gets flooded with that much money. People don't make wise decisions.
Okay, right now we're voting on the title.
Okay.
Can we call the question on amending the title of the resolution?
Is that in no further discussion? Then
Well, would this be an appropriate time to talk about what kind of studies?
No. We're
no,
gonna
that would come.
vote on this one.
there's some more amendments that
Okay.
need to take place
This
here
is
too.
just a single amendment here.
Right.
Deleting from line 4, starting at the word housing, ending on line 7 at the word "an." Is that? No, in line
Right.
6, line 6, the word "and." Is that correct?
Correct. And to draft. So it would read a resolution to draft.
To draft. Okay. How do you vote, Commissioner Newman?
Yes?
Commissioner Liebman? Vice Mayor Liebman?
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
I vote yes. So those words are stricken.
Okay. I would also like to make an amendment to delete line 11 through 16. And then at the end, section 1. So we would be deleting, whereas beneficial communities submitted an application under the 2011 Universal Application for Housing Credits. This has nothing to do with the resolution that I'm proposing at this point. And whereas beneficial communities proposes to develop a 91-unit senior affordable multifamily project. And then the end, the whereas clause opposing the award of the tax credits. Yes, Mr.
Commissioner, if you're doing that, then you're going to have to strike the reference in line 25 as well.
Okay, so,
Or that whereas.
okay, so lines 24 through 27?
I would say lines
Okay,
24 through 25.
25 to hometown station.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah,
that
keep in-
whereas,
The City Commission has expressed concerns on the impact of additional multifamily units on the city's infrastructure
Correct.
and all new multifamily development.
Correct.
Keep that in.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Harris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Liebman?
Yes.
Commissioner Newman?
yes.
I vote yes as well. So that amendment passes. Any further amendments? Then the item as amended is open for discussion.
Okay, I have some very, very serious concerns, given the number of residential developments that are on the books as to what this is doing to our concurrency and to our CRA plan. I would like to ask some questions of our CRA director, Mr. Stephen David, if that's okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it is.
Good evening.
Good evening. I have a couple of questions for you. One regarding the general planning policy in the CRA plan, the community redevelopment plan. There are some plan elements that are listed in the general planning policy, and one of them is identifying any capital improvement projects in the redevelopment area in the city. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Affordable housing policy statement. Do you have an affordable housing policy statement within the CRA plan?
A statement? What is considered a statement? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This is a technical plan element in your CRA plan. So basically what you're, let me back up a little. These projects that are coming on board, where exactly is the line of the CRA drawn?
In terms of Sunset Boulevard, it's anything north, on the north side of Sunset, in other words. City Hall wouldn't be in the CRA district, but the other side of the street is.
So the other side of the street is in the CRA district?
That's correct.
As well as Hometown Station?
Yes, that would be in the CRA district as well.
And what are the boundaries to the east?
To the east would be Red Road, but again, at each location, it's midway, it's mid-block, the boundary line.
And then to the
62nd on the
west?
62nd Avenue on the west.
Okay. I was looking at the CRA plan, and I can find nowhere where any of these developments are incorporated in this plan.
Yeah, Hometown Station is referred to. Which other ones are you referring to? Of course,
6101 Sunset. Are there any other developments?
Not in the plan, no. That's not something in the plan.
Okay. Can you tell me where your neighborhood impact review is?
Neighborhood impact review?
Yep. That's one of the technical plan elements of a CRA plan.
Oh, I don't think we have anything specific to that. Neighborhood impact review?
Correct.
On what specific issue? Housing, affordable housing?
On development and housing in this area.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you're referring to infrastructure, if that's the issue.
I am talking about a neighborhood impact review, whether it be the impact on the schools, whether it be a transportation impact, whether it be impact on our green space.
Yeah, no, the CRA talks about different projects in particular, but once you get into those projects, you do the studies that you're looking to do now to determine those needs.
Okay, but basically this neighborhood impact review statement should basically give you a kind of a roadmap as to how much of this you're going to need so that you can plan the appropriate
Yeah, there are some general facts in there that there is a need for affordable housing, and there was, I think, a deficit mentioned in the city of 162 units.
Okay, where did that come from?
Oh, that came from census data at that time.
From census data. So
2000 census data.
Has there been a actual study that shows what we're calling for here, vacancy rates?
No. I think actually the Affordable Housing Committee actually wanted to do that at one point, but the funding wasn't there at the time to do an affordable housing needs assessment.
Okay, can you tell me if what major housing projects are planned in the CRA plan?
Well, right now it's Madison Square. That's the big project that we're trying to move forward.
And is there currently concurrency for this plan?
In terms of infrastructure?
In infrastructure, parks, roads?
Well, all that has, again, we haven't gotten to that point yet where we call for these studies.
Okay, but how many units are planned for Madison Square? Because we have a workshop coming up.
Right. It just depends on the commission, but we're looking to get a minimum of 60 units total on approximately 2 acres of property.
And you have no idea what the concurrency levels are and whether the coming on board with these other projects is going to use up the concurrency that's currently planned for this project?
That's a good point. Yeah, we should take all the projects into account. And again, we can do that with the planning department. But yeah, that should be reviewed. What you're suggesting is great. The absorption studies and traffic analysis, that's a good thing.
Okay, because right now, I believe that, in order for the CRA plan to work, we absolutely need these studies because these projects are going to use up all of the concurrency that is required to execute the CRA plan. Can you tell me how many dollars have been spent in the CRA to date? since its inception? How many millions?
Oh, I don't have that figure handy, no.
Give me your best guess.
Oh, well, each year our budget, well, the initial budget was only $600,000, so each year it varied. This year it's, a little over $2 million.
So would it be safe to say that over the course of the years, we've spent probably over $5 million?
That would be safe to say, yes.
Yeah, I think it was $5 million in the first 5 years, actually, if I recall my analysis of that. And in that time, what projects have been built? What plans
several
have been
projects.
completed? Large developments?
With the CRA money, large developments? No, Valencia and Red Road Commons are the two large housing projects. We focus on infrastructure, single-family housing development. Those are the major areas we focus on. But again, Madison Square is our cornerstone project. We're still trying to implement that one as well.
And how many affordable units are currently in Red Road Commons?
Red Road, the affordable units are 40, but I think it's 40% of the total, I believe.
So it's 40?
No,
Plus,
not total units, but affordable units,
correct.
or supposed to be affordable units.
If I could, I think the operative word you used was supposed to be, because in fact they were, as it worked out in the language of the development agreement.
Exactly.
The occupants qualify for affordable, but there's no requirement that the units be made available at 30% of the HUD.
That's right.
30% of income
That's
based on
correct.
HUD standards. So they're not. It's actually zero, I think.
Okay, well, that's not quite true, because basically what they're saying is that the standard that was used was Miami-Dade County and their median income rate, not the median income rate of the CRA area.
I think,
So
again,
what
it
are
was
we
just-
talking?
okay, but
You know,
again,
we
it was-
can switch the statistics regarding of, which way we want to benefit and spin
Well,
this.
I wasn't talking about statistics. I was just talking about the language. There's no requirement that
Right.
the units be made available at affordable rates.
Oh, there absolutely
for any
is.
No, look at the development
I think
agreement.
it's based on affordable incomes, but it's not based on the actual rent, which is an important component.
It's exactly correct. It was based on the income, saying that people who qualify for affordable should be in there in certain numbers, but not that the units be made to them at a rate that's affordable. That was the glitch.
Okay, affordable income. So, to me, it's one and the same. The bottom line is that we have not done a needs assessment in how long?
Well, 2000 was the last information that we have, yeah.
Okay. When I'm looking at some of these applications that are on the
2005,
that have been submitted for these tax credits, some of the data that's being used in here, for example, I'll give you an example. On one of these are all exhibits that were submitted in order to obtain this funding. And one of them alleges that basically, they're in compliance with all the concurrency, and that they've done a study of surrounding areas and vacancy rates. And the surrounding areas that they have used include projects on 8th Street, Brownsville. Okay, so to me, that has absolutely no relevance to the statistics in South Miami. So I would suggest that our planner, our CRA director, make copies of all of the exhibits that have been submitted for these projects and review them very carefully, because, for example, that study, I believe, is totally bogus. It has absolutely no merit to the vacancy rates. Why weren't the apartments at Sunset Club and along 67th Avenue? Those were in closer proximity to South Miami than 8th Street in Brownsville.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, well, that's in here. Have you seen what was submitted
No,
for
I
this application?
No.
Anybody?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, well, I suggested everybody go and take a print. It's 179 pages long. And I have some questions regarding the mayor of Miami-Dade County being able to go ahead and basically in here it says, was the local government contributing any amount to this funding to this project? And the answer was yes. And the funding that's been contributed is from the local government, basically giving them the impact fees. Is that allowable for them to basically assign away our impact fees? Because I'd like to know at the end of the day who's going to be responsible for those.
Commissioner, I believe the impact fees, the state legislature modified the law where we're no longer allowed to go ahead and have and input impact fees on development.
So how can that be actually considered government contribution to a development if we can't assess impact fees to begin with?
Good question.
I believe the way that the current county requirement is, because it is a transportation concurrency exception area, the county assesses impact fees for the impacts of transportation within the county, and I think they do a proportion. They allocate those for whatever improvements to the county roads that they do. So that would be probably
It would be the PTT dollars, but they don't have the authority to go ahead and delegate our PTT dollars
as a contribution to this project, which is what they've stated in these exhibits. So I would ask that each one of you familiarize yourself with the statements that each one of the projects that's looking for money here has pretty much, stated. That being said, we can go ahead and do this haphazardly and just build, or we can go, and this is not to say that I am against development, because I am not. But what I am against is our residents and our taxpayers at the end of the day absorbing the costs for projects and an abundance of projects that the city doesn't need. Now, there are statements in here also that says that there is a need for affordable housing, and that even though, actually that was in the comp plan, because there are conflicting sections in the comp plan. In the comp plan, it makes the statement that something to the effect that even though we require 70 units to comply, since we're part of the bigger county, we should absorb some of the needs of the county. Okay, so, and that's actually in the comp plan. I don't know who put that there, but the bottom line is that at the end of the day, the county isn't ponying up to meet our needs to take care of the different demographics in our city that need taken care of. For example, and I used this example before and I'll use it again, the senior center right now. Who pays for the meals at the senior center?
The feds?
It's a grant.
And it's all 100% grant, or do we have to contribute a portion of that?
It's slightly subsidized by the city.
Okay, so it is slightly subsidized by the city. The senior center also, if I recall correctly, and Mr. David, you know that for the last 2 years, that was one of my stipulations in the budget, that we expend $40,000 for a social worker at the senior center. And do you recall why that is, that we're having to subsidize that social worker at the senior center?
They cut the community development block grant by that amount, so we had to either let that person go or the CRA absorbs it.
No, actually, the county used to provide it.
Correct. That's
right. Yes.
the money.
And they cut it out.
Correct.
So basically, we are being saddled with an overabundance of development with absolutely no support from the county. So I think that before we start approving these projects willy-nilly, we need to do a careful and complete analysis of what the city's requirements are and what we can sustain. And that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Welsh, you have the floor.
And that means when we find a project that can pay its fair share of taxes, that we're more apt to sign off on the development agreement?
No, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with doing a needs assessment of how many units we actually need and what kind of housing we need.
Mr. Bremo, I have a question for a planner. Need a planner here. How does a small municipality Excuse me, somebody speaking? How does a small municipality decide what its needs or requirements are?
Insofar as your housing?
Well, I mean, there's
types of businesses?
well, there's sort of two. We have a collision here.
Right.
One is what a city needs or what a city requires as a sort of as an organism. A city is an organic being, and then there's at the other end of the spectrum is private property rights and the right of a property owner to build whatever he or she chooses, and those are very different ways of looking at a city. One is, I mean, the whole concept of planning, I gather, is to sort of think about it from the former point of view. So how does a city like ours go about figuring out how we should grow? We had a comprehensive plan, which presumably people had thought through and made some decisions, and now, sometime later, it seems we're having some misgivings. Mr. Bremo, please.
Typically, your plan guides the way the community would like to go. It sets the broad base of how you want the community to develop over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period. And you update that occasionally, and that's what the state used to require. Every cycle you go through an evaluation and appraisal report to see, are you meeting those goals, objectives, and policies within your plan based on what the community's needs are. If you feel that you are not, you amend your plan document accordingly to reflect what the community's needs and desires are. The underlying driving factor of that is also the community's ability to provide the necessary infrastructure to support what it is that you'd like to see, whether it's business, whether it's residential, whether it's multifamily, single family, however it is. So it depends on your level of your levels of service that you want to get, that you have adopted within the guidelines of what the state says you can't adopt less than. Now, for instance, transportation is a huge issue in this county. Most of the roadways are adopted at either level of service F or a higher percentage of a level of service E or F. You can go in excess of up to 150%.
That's F as in school grade F.
Correct.
Like
as in failure.
Okay.
A being the most unrestricted flow of traffic. Mm-hmm. F being just a constrained roadway. Mm-hmm. That's how the Department of Transportation allocates its levels for most infrastructure.
So just a little side note here. When you talk about the TOD being a transportation concurrency exception area, what does that mean exactly?
Typically what happens within these exception areas is that they're not subject to the traditional, you have levels of service that you've established, but within these exception areas they're not subjected to the standard concurrency review for traffic.
And that's because they're on mass transit?
Correct.
Yeah. So got that. And the schools, is that concurrency handled by the county?
That is handled by the school board.
So inside the TOD, the only thing that leaves us then is parks.
Correct.
And if we don't include the empath,
correct,
then we're already over on parks. So any new developments are going to need additional parks. It doesn't matter.
Correct.
And given the new rules that got passed in Tallahassee last year, is the city allowed to require a developer to pony up to help us meet concurrency in parks, or do we have to do that ourselves?
Our land development code has a clause in there that allows us to do a payment in lieu of, or the acquisition of additional land to meet the parks concurrency requirement.
Mm-hmm. And that was not superseded by the.
Correct.
Okay.
I think most of what the new state legislation superseded was the state saw this was imposing a mitigation fee on a developer for an impact that was there prior to their development. And so that's where the debate was. Now, there are certain provisions that I'm looking into whereby the city might be able to readopt a concurrency system outside of the transportation concurrency exception area or requests exclusion from the urban service boundary area, which is required as part of that TCEA. If we exclude ourselves from that, then we may be able to, as a city, reestablish certain concurrency requirements within the city that would help mitigate some of these potential impacts.
So we can go back to sort of the concept here, which is trying to figure out absorption and vacancy rates. Vacancy is a pretty easy number to understand, how many units are empty. And explain the concept of absorption to me here. What would an absorption study, how would that work? If we were to contract with somebody to do that for us, what would they tell us? What would they look at?
Essentially, they're going to look at what the market has, how many units you have that are on the market, within the market, and give you an idea of a percentage of units that the community can actually fill.
Over some amount of time.
Correct.
Yeah. So here's another question. Let's say we find that there's some number of units, some absorption rate and some vacancy rate, and a private entity, as opposed to a public entity, a private entity says we want to build and we think we can fill them. And you look at your numbers and you say, yeah, but it might take you a while. And they say, well, that's our choice. We think we can bring in people from outside of South Miami to fill these units. We think that there's a regional demand. And if we build here, people will come. So that comes back to sort of the idea that Commissioner Newman was raising about what the city needs or what the city's requirements are. And it sort of pits that against what the area does. And so we're part of a metropolis, and I think a developer's view is sort of what would sell in South Miami. Right. If somebody builds buys a vacant lot in the south end of the city and builds a big house there, they're not necessarily trying to entice somebody who currently lives in an apartment to move in there. They may be bringing somebody from outside, maybe even an investor from South America. So this comes back to sort of my earlier question, sort of about thinking about the city as an organic thing, residing within a larger municipality where there may be other demands. And I think the Vice Mayor sort of raised sort of something along the same issue, that there may be a demand for senior affordable, for instance, that's region-wide, and that's somewhat distinct from sort of the local demand. And how do cities traditionally plan in terms of considering those two different scales of demand?
It really does vary. I've worked for communities where there was no provision of housing in that particular market segment, but they participated with their county in the provision of that housing somewhere else. Some communities that are larger take that task on to themselves. For instance, the city of Miami probably does that because of their size. So it varies. Now, as I said, your comp plan should be your guiding document. That's what, if you're looking to make your changes to the roadmap, if you will, for the city of South Miami, that's where you make those changes. You make the changes that you can look at and evaluate to say, well, we would like to see this move forward in this direction over the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And that, once again, ties right back into your infrastructure needs. Do you have the infrastructure, the capacity to sustain the types of development that the community would like to see?
Mr. Bremo, how many of our residents are still on septic tank?
Excuse me.
Well, actually,
that's. I don't want you to interrupt me for just a second. I'll let you ask about septic tanks, and it's roughly two-thirds.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to raise a point of order.
Okay, go ahead. Raise a point of order, please.
Okay. Number one, our charter actually states that we shall use Robert's Rules of Order when conducting meetings. Mr. Attorney, are you familiar with that in our charter?
Yes, I am.
And
it provides that unless the city has a specific rule with regard to the proceedings, then the city is to follow Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, and in Robert's Rules of Order on page 382, there is actually a rule against the chair's participation in debate unless the chair is willing and finds another member of the commission willing to take over the position of chair for that particular issue. So I'm going to request that if you wish to continue to speak, that you find a member on this panel that doesn't wish to, so that they can impartially rule this proceeding. If you'd like to see it, I have it here. Mr. Attorney, am I interpreting this correctly? Right here.
Under Robert's rules, a chairman normally doesn't vote either. And
That's your prerogative. That's correct.
And no, it's not my prerogative. I'm required to vote. I think.
No, you're not.
I believe I have been told by the attorney that I am required to vote. So we do not follow Robert's rules in their purest form. And the chair in South Miami traditionally, excuse me, interrupting me. The chair traditionally has been allowed to speak at city commission meetings for as long as I've been attending them.
Well, that's because nobody's followed Robert's rules.
I'd like to make a point of history about the commission.
Sir, you're recognized.
About 3 years ago, it appeared that Horace Fallu was on the losing side of we're going to be on the losing side of a vote. So he just walked out of here, and many people got angry with that. And people looked up that you can't duck a vote. And I mean, if Robert's rule says that the chair can't vote, then we got to clarify that.
It does not say the chair can't vote. It says the chair can use his prerogative of voting or not voting. If he's going to break a tie, he can break a tie. And in every other issue, it really doesn't matter since he's voting last.
Yeah. I'm going to do whatever proclamation I can or create whatever ordinance to make sure that the mayor has input in debate. I don't want to see Robert's rules used to stifle debate stifle the input of any of us.
Then you need to have a rule making the chair impartial.
Excuse me, I have the floor and you're not recognized. Mr. Attorney?
Yes. And
is the mayor, as chair of the city commission, allowed to participate in discussion?
well, according to Robert's rules that was cited by Commissioner Newman, the presiding officer must turn over control if he proceeds in the debate. But that would also indicate that whoever takes over as presiding officer would not be allowed to engage in the debate. And with regard to voting, I think it's clear that the mayor would have to vote and could not abstain from voting, and to the extent that, because that would then violate the state statutes. So obviously Robert's rules cannot cause a violation of state statutes with regard to voting. But with regard to the control of the meeting as being the chairman, Robert's rules does provide, as stated by Commissioner Newman, that you would have to, for that particular item, if you wanted to debate it, then you'd have to turn over the chair to another member of the commission who did not want to debate the issue.
Is there a member of the commission this evening who would grant me the privilege to speak?
First of all, let me ask a question about debating. Is debating asking questions of the planning board? Is that debating?
Yes, that anything that is spoken other than and making a motion, seconding a motion, and voting on a motion would be part of the debate. Now, at the same time, I have to add that, and I believe it says a supermajority of the commission can vote to override Robert's rules
For that,
for that particular issue.
I make a motion to see if we have 4 out of 5 votes to override Robert's Rules of Order on this issue. To let the mayor engage in discourse, dialogue, debate, or whatever, and that we not be limited by Robert's Rules of Order. I hope I hear a second.
Second.
Discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Newman, how do you vote?
no.
Vice Mayor Liebman?
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Enjoy your free speech, Phil.
Thank you. Ms. McCain, you're interrupting, and next time I'll ask you to leave. So,
How do we make this permanent?
well, we'll have to do a resolution to make it permanent.
I'll sponsor it.
Look into it. So where I was going with this, Mr. Bremo, was the Todd is a special area that does, and there's no other area that lacks transportation concurrency exception. Is the hometown and district in the same category, or is it just the Todd?
No, most of the city is within, most of the the developed part of the city is within the transportation concurrency exception area, excuse me, the CCEA.
So it moves west of the Todd as well?
Yes.
Do you know how far?
I don't have that information currently, sir. I'd have to look at that.
That would be useful to know. So, I mean, the way it's sounding to me is that we're over on parks. So any development needs to pony up for parks. The Todd certainly, and it turns out some other areas too, are not subject to transportation concurrency. And so, sort of a lot of our concerns here, it seems we understand already. And then there's the question of absorption and vacancy rates, and that's, to some extent, a question of, I mean, if I was a developer, I'd be very interested in that. And insofar as we, the city, are interested in seeing Madison Square developed, we then become a developer, and that's something that should be of intimate interest to us, because we don't want to build a white elephant that sits there vacant. The place I get torn, for lack of a better word, is on the sort of the best interests of a city in terms of planning, maintaining filled structures, and the private property rights of a developer to build a structure, and even to attract people in from outside of the city, because we don't have a wall around our city, and people are allowed to move in. And as far as I know, a developer is allowed to build and encourage people to move in. And then you can get into questions, which is sort of a different issue, of what sort of development do you want to see, what income ranges and what scales, et cetera. And cities have an interest and a say there as well. So those were the thoughts that I had. And one last thing. So our comp plan was approved which year? That had the request for 100 to 200 extra.
The evaluation appraisal report.
Mm-hmm.
It started in 2005 or 6, and there were a couple amendments. There were a couple adoption amendments, and the final adoption was in 2010.
But the basic data that went in was from 2005, roughly 7 years, at least 7 years ago.
Correct.
And based on what Mr. David said, it sounds like it was based on the 2000 census data, which is now from 12 years out of date. And so those numbers may or may not
Still be valid.
still
correct.
be valid, exactly. Okay, that's all That's all the thinking I wanted to share out loud, but thank you for commissioners for the courtesy of doing that. Anybody else?
Mr. Bremo, actually, Mr. City Manager, if a city does not plan appropriately with the number, a city our size, of 11,000 residents.
All right, Vice Mayor, if we're following Robert's rules, then other commissioners get to speak, and you've already spoken.
Well, they didn't want to speak.
Excuse me, I'm the chair. Would any other commissioners like to speak?
Yeah. For how long will this, when can we expect the report to be finalized? Is it a 6-year report, a 6-month report, a 3-month report? When do we get the report back?
Actually, Commissioner, we were talking about that. It takes approximately 2 months to do a proper RFP, just to move that forward. Then after you all select the firm, then at that time you provide an order to proceed. They proceed, and usually takes anywhere between 6 months to a year, depending on what the scope of work that you give them.
Any idea for ballpark figures for this report?
I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
How much money? More or less.
In this market, probably anywhere between, if we're just doing a concurrency study, doing a evaluation of our concurrency requirements, our levels of service, the vacancy rate, you may be looking at anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000.
Thank you.
I mean, I know that's a wide range, but
So it's not a $100,000 report.
It hopefully will not be $100,000.
Thank you.
It all depends on what and the scope of services you all put. If it's simple data collection and then forecasting forward, yes. But if you add more, like assisting in the comp plan development, things of that nature, then it escalates.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we call the vote?
No, I get to close the resolution. The person sponsoring the resolution opens and closes. So if there's someone else.
Well, I have one question here. Would we be considering just absolutely redoing the comp plan, bringing it up to date, and coming up with a new comp plan?
Well, we haven't received that guidance from the commission. I mean, you could, but you already have an existing comp plan. My humble suggestion to you would be to review the comp plan after you receive the data and the evaluation and the recommendation from, if you decide to go with a firm, and then from there, if you need to make adjustments of the comp plan, you do so based on citizen input, things of that nature, and all that. But what gets us in trouble is we tweak little by little, and then the interconnections are missed. So consequently, when you do one little tweak, it has adverse impacts on others, and then you end up having something you never anticipated. So my humble suggestion as your manager would be, if you want to go into that track, then you hire a firm to assist you in a comp plan modification or renewal. I wouldn't suggest doing the whole comp plan again. That would be a lot of money.
Vice Mayor Liebman, you're
yeah. There are a couple of issues that I would like to recommend to the commission, and one of them is that we contact the original author of our comp plan, Mr. Swarthout, who is in Boca Raton and has very definite ideas of what's gone wrong with our comp plan. And if it's, agreeable with the commission, I would like for him to come and address this commission at possibly a workshop, and I think that he would probably be willing to do that.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Okay, and that being said, in a city of 11,000 residents, if we have the wrong types, too many of the wrong type of whatever, the burden is going to be on the taxpayer. It's going to be on the rest of the city. So what's going to happen is by all of the good intentions, and it sounds great on paper, but at the end of the day, those residents who are aging in their home and have no desire to move into a $300, 500 square foot apartment are basically going to be the ones that are screwed, because they are the ones that are going to have to pick up the tab for those people that are in the $300 apartments. And that's all I have to say. That's why we have to carefully and diligently review this and make sure that we're doing the right thing. We have a duty to the people that are here 15 years from now to be able to afford and to be able to stay in their homes in South Miami. And that's all I have to say.
Which brings the question, what are appropriate studies? That would be just what we would get from Robert Swarthout?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Newman, when you talk about residents picking up the tab for people living in $300 a month apartments, if we get into development agreement as we did with Red Road Commons, part of that development agreement required the Red Road Commons to give the city a payment in lieu of taxes equal to what they were paying. Give the city a payment in lieu of taxes should they become tax exempt equal to what they were paying when they were for profit.
Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Keep in mind, that the city, when it gets into development agreement, does have the right to, ask for a payment in lieu of taxes.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Yes, please watch the clock, though.
Okay. The problem is that most of you voted against the ordinance that would have required developments 25,000 square feet or less to have a development agreement. Right now, 40,000 or less do not require a development agreement or commission approval, because you guys voted no on that ordinance 2 weeks ago.
I think I voted for it, no?
No, you voted no.
Your new thing.
Too late.
Your new thing is looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on this item as amended, is there a question?
Should we read through it in entirety, considering we made so many amendments?
Madam Clerk, do you want to read not the whereas clause changes, but the resolution in its revised form?
Read the resolution again. Okay, and the attorney here. A resolution to draft an ordinance placing a moratorium on multifamily development pending appropriate studies of absorption and vacancy rates, as well as transportation and parks concurrency. Deleting the first two whereas. Deleting.
I think we continue on line 21.
No,
18.
we 18.
18.
Okay, correct.
No, I don't.
Right, whereas the city commission is
I don't think
requesting
I'm not calling for a reading of all the whereas clauses. I just wanted the resolution itself.
we're deleting with the whereas between lines 24 and 27.
Yeah.
It was just 24 and 25.
24 and 25.
Right.
Okay.
And deleting section 1.
When there is section 1 completely.
Correct.
Commissioner Harris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Welsh?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Liebman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Liebman. Commissioner Newman?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So. Next meeting?
Can we go straight into it without...
6 o'clock.
Huh?
6 o'clock.